each different bubble of reality is true.
A galactic historian is a person that looks at all the lines of dramatic karma.
Nudge, nudge. It's the Holy Grail.
Improvise. Mysterious.
It's counter psychic intelligence.
Why is DNA farming of this star cluster so important?
Because we do manifest our reality. We do create our reality.
So I had a thought yesterday that just kind of came through me as I was asking my higher self the question that so many people have thought about, and it's, you know, do we actually have free will? Can I do anything I want, or am I predestined? Or and I think the answer is both, right? I think that
yes.
It depends on which direction we're looking at in time. Right? So time doesn't exist. All things are happening at the same time. So if we're looking forward in time, I can choose absolutely anything. It's a choose your own adventure novel. But when I get to the end of my life, the book has been written, right? The last chapter, when I die and that last cover, the cover closes, right? I look back over my life, and my life has been my life is spoken for, right? I can start that book over and read it again, and each word is already in the book. So it's both a choose your own adventure novel and a tell me more.
I tend to disagree. There are certain people who are what I call in the reincarnation system, meaning much of their life is planned and the perception of free will is very limited, or their perspective on how much free will is limited. In my perspective, and in what I've learned, is this world's rules are it's a 100% free-willed planet and a 100% free-willed solar system and a 100% free-willed galaxy and a 100% free-willed universe. There is a system of higher soul that is trying to plan a chain of consciousnesses that connect together to make a long strain of consciousnesses. So when this Ben, was born, your process of I am free-willed choices began, and you had a game plan that the fetus in your mother's womb created. And you, the beginning thing that was trying to learn to work in this world, co-created with that. But at the same time, you can change absolutely anything. Things like drugs and the hardcores of them are an example of how right away a rebellious soul can say, no, I'm not playing your game. I'm not following down there. I'm going to do this. A war and a variety of other things that eliminate this whole concept that everything is pre-planned. Everything is synchronistic. And when we see everything as synchronistic and that the background environment, the celestial mind holding space for us, the solar system mind holding space for us, the galactic system and the universal system holding space for us at different scales, so our experience in the seen and the unseen world is far more impactful. And yes, free will has these layers of perception where we think we don't, but in fact we do. Because oftentimes it is this individuated, compartmentalized micro-being of the now who's teaching the higher soul actually how to live in this density manifest. Because they're not here. We are. We are I am.
We're the boots on the ground.
We're the boots on the ground, which are non-localized souls who become a localized event. And with that localized event, we are beings of light, photonic creations of light that store memory in light. And we are in a shared reality that is just a hologram of light. That's some basic facts there. And we can look at that. When humanity wants to use free will, it comes down to the shared reality rules. You can define your reality, your boundaries, and we do this all the time in our physical life. Can we then define our boundaries on how we share realities? All the other species in the galaxy have gotten to that point if they wanted to have advanced form of space travel. We are on that verge where each and every individual being will stand 100% in their sovereign space of power, which is their heart, which was the muscle that began, the first thing that began as all the DNA began to unravel and uncode. It said it needs a heart. And when there was a heart and there was no eyes, no ears, no central nervous system, all that, there was still a perception. Okay? And that is where we can learn to redefine our reality rules, where 100% free will truly means something to us. And the plans we had at pre-birth are just plans or blueprints in which we want to co-create with.
Wow, there's a lot in there. So let me ask my question again, or I guess it wasn't a question, but let me ask it this way, in a more concise way. So if we look at our present, like my present life right now, right? Mm-hmm. If we're looking at our present as let's say we're looking at a timeline, we've got our past, we've got our future, and we've got present is right now. If we look forward in time.
I am Ben now.
Right, you are Ben. So if we look forward in time, we have free will choice. And if we look backwards in time, we've made our decision, right?
No. It is your free will choice to observe decision.
Yes. Okay.
If you're entangled, if you're still entangled to the polarity of the decision, you are locked into that choice. But we also know through common, stuff, we can change the past, the resonance of the past.
Yeah, and
you do it in healing all the time.
Yes, this is something that we do a lot. All anything is a perspective. So if we can change the perspective of the past, if I have a memory looking back of my dad abusing me, and then I ask my dad about it, and he says, "No, you were about to fall down the stairs, and I grabbed you, and you thought I was hurting you," right? That changes the past too.
Yep. Mm-hmm. It changes the past.
It's a fun conversation.
Everything is based off of the perspective of the observer. When we learn not to be entangled observers all the time, and I know quantum science says everything's an entangled observer. Well, our higher soul technically isn't. And there's a way to see that through the terminology that I used before of 1 degree of separation, which is the total potential of impact we could have on the world from everyone that we've made spiritual contracts in the unseen world of the fetus in the mother's womb. We realize we do have free will. We have free will at a vast expanse, and it is only perspective and the dogmas of our perspective that are limiting us.
That's great. So let me ask you the magic question. What question should I be asking you right now?
Okay. What question? Let me base it off of the individual teaching of what the total potential of the audience is. The one question that I think that's most important here is understanding spatial dynamics. People look at the world and they see their three-dimensional world, but we learn that there are people that are colorblind. A certain percentage of it are colorblind. I say that this world is a 7-color time experiencing world, and that time must be related to color. Color must be related to perspective on how much the soul spark is there. If we are in those meditative moments and we define that as where a majority of the spark is in, we are a 7-color time experiencing being. If we are a common runt driving on the street, going to work, waiting at the stoplight, we're probably only 2 or 3 color time experiencing being. If we are in the throes of our sexual prowess, we are probably a 7-color time being. The perspective of time and how it relates to our energy centers, from the 7 energy centers, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, each one represents a seen and unseen layer in the reality and the experience and color of time that's being encoded into our mind. It's then being coded into our cellular memory, and then that's being encoded into DNA that will inevitably pass on to our descendants. That's the question that the audience isn't really asking. You ask the collective question.
Okay, so what's the answer?
Can one see time as a coloring experience? Can you see how your infrared body is relating to sensuality and sexuality, but your violet light body is only dealing with the unseen world of a ghost down the street that's trying to jump into your frequency, or something different than that? Each energy center has an unseen and a seen and unseen side, and the unseen side has what I call an animus, an energy body that is related to that light frequency that is constantly encoding the seen and the unseen experience into our mind. And it is only the dogmas of our perspectives that prevent us from seeing the fullness of that data. Spiritualists and people since the dawn of spirituality have tried to help people see the unseen world. And they have also created dogmas that have limited themselves also, until such free thinkers came around and helped people shed off the dogmas of spirit belief that truly limited us. We're about to go into a new layer, which is an eighth color. Much like I said, the 27th letter to the alphabet, there is no governing body to add an eighth color. That just truly defines the limits. And the rest of the people saying we're only this are arguing for the limitations of a reality.
So one thing that I've been thinking about a lot is in regards to evolution is it's something that you keep saying, and I'd like for you to go deeper into that, is once people are so this is something I keep hoping for myself, right, is to be able to see a color that I've never seen before, right, or see something that I haven't been able to see before, right? I mean, on the scale of the scale of light, right, ultraviolet light, different, and then like, you know, different radio frequencies and the spectrum of sound. There's so much that we as humans aren't initially able to see, right? And, you know, some people, like my wife, can see things that most people can't see and can hear things that most people can't hear. And so how do we open ourselves up to those different frequencies so that we can see a new color or hear a new thing that will open up our mind in an entirely new world? I mean, when I met Jen, I was completely based on the scientific method, and science couldn't prove it. It wasn't real. And there's no, like, I didn't believe in yoga or colors, you know, people seeing colors of auras or hearing things or psychics, clairvoyance, right? And then once I met Jen, it opened up a whole new world for me. So how can we as muggles born into these bodies and groomed to see only what we're meant to see, what we're supposed to see, how do we activate those different pieces in us?
Very good question. The first thing is we experience this reality, and vision is just a micro part of that experience. When somebody is working on the unseen spectrum, they aren't really having vision. They're having an experience that is expanding their knowingness. So removing the dogmas of linguistics to allow the experience to be understood, that's an instant moment where we're engaging the hindsight and foresight. Because when you see something new, you have no definition for it. And until we put it into our cellular memory, that has some form of comparison and contrast to something else that we've seen. So when we see something completely brand new, just like when Jen was introduced to you, our knowingness expands, our potential expands. So the new color is in our minds already. We just have no fractal reference for it. And the mystical is about making that fractal reference and manifesting it here, whether it's through thought constructs, art, or something else that can make something that was never defined before in our reality. It's an experience in which we can mystically engage hindsight and foresight simultaneously as the conscious unentangled observer who is not allowing charge and polarity to drive forth the coloring of the experience.
So so most people that come across these skills do it by accident, not necessarily by culmination or cultivation, right? It just happens. There's an awakening. Everyone's awakening looks different, right? So, for example, correct. Jen, you know, she started doing yoga and it activated her body, and then somebody handed her a crystal skull, and it just blew out all of her circuits, and she had that experience again. It reminded her of all the special talents that she had when she was a child that she had forgotten about, right? So it seems like we could tap into our higher self and say, what do I need to have that experience? Or tap into our our future or our Akashic Records, what is that experience for me, right? Am I on the right path here?
Yep, you're on the right path. It'll be about discovering how to unentangle yourself from the reality, so ultimately you can observe it without polarity or charge as a single stream of information that may have thousands of other compartmented strings apart into it, but you are still the master being who can uncompartmentalize all information and see it as the bigger picture. That is your sovereign right as the I am born this time, who can engage the DNA skin suit that has thousands of memories in it. Our previous generations of memories are stored and encoded into that DNA. DNA has a frequency of existence beyond our spectrum of understanding. DNA has a light frequency too. There are thousands of experiments that show, frog DNA being transferred through light, or duck DNA through eggs. Example after example after example. So our consciousness can engage the unseen world, and right now we use the linguistics of the mystical for that engagement process, where our knowingness expands. We all know we are more than we've heard, read, or studied. Since our consciousness began as little babies, we knew that, and there were times where we may have been on plateaus or static in expression, but we're still allowing the learning process. At this advanced state, when being the unentangled observer says no charge, no polarity can go over me, and I can have the unlimited point of view, once we have that unlimited point of view in what I call sacred neutrality, all information flows as an experience of expansion of knowingness. There will be no longer need to have a vision to create the mystical experience. The mystical will be living everyday life that way, which is what you and Jen are striving to do on a more micro expression of that construct of the living the life together. On the other side, the mystical experience that Jen had with that crystal skull is what I call a spiritual contract. And those spiritual contracts are part of the blueprint the fetus in the mother's womb creates. And the previous generations that you were born, you were also a fetus in the mother's womb, creating the Ben of the now and the Jen of the now, because the lifetime of the last lifetime spiritual contracts resolved karmas, energies, dogmas, dharmas, or any other thing that we want to define there. So a future being can come into potential and then eventually, through the synchronistic process of great mystery, come together, and the next layer of spiritual contracts unfold through free will. Because without you actually having the act of love and her having the act of love for you, that future doesn't potentially exist until you, the I am now, actually does it.
I can already tell this is an episode I'm going to listen to several times. I feel like this radio show in particular is a very selfish cause for me, because I get to learn from you and have this amazing conversation that I can feel raising my vibration. And I suggest that everyone that's listening listen to this a couple times at least. Andrew speaks on many different levels, and he speaks in layers. And I promise you'll get one thing out of it this time that if you listen to it again, you'll get something else. And every time you listen to it, you're going to get something new. So Jen and I sat down and listened to the recording, and Jen hadn't heard it yet, right? And so, Andrew, you're going to love this. The whole time that we were listening to it, Jen's she wasn't even listening to the words, right? She gets the information from your higher self, and everything you said was dead on. And there was one thing that you said about, and it was at the very end of the call, you were like, well, you guys should do a meditation where you go back into the womb and you look at what was your life contract that you created, and then you said that we need to look back to when we first met, and we had something that we were going to do that we kind of knew we were supposed to do, but we forgot about, and Jen knew what it was instantly, right? Awesome. And this work that we have been doing with our sexual healing modality that we're now calling the multidimensional awakening, because it's so much more than what we've been calling it. And right off the bat, Jen was saying, and we had 3 clients in one day say, whoa, this is an ancient goddess ceremony. We've done this before in community, right? We've done this before, and we've used this vibration to change the planet. and we've done mystery plays and all this. And so this goes directly with what you were saying to me about what we're going to be focusing on, and it's our mystery school. It's everything that we've been doing in our mystery school.
Very cool.
So
very cool.
Everyone should listen to this several times.
Yeah. When I hear the success like that, it reminds me when I was going on 22, 23, and I kind of knew at that point, there was a bigger plan for what was going on, because at first when I'm like, why am I being exposed to the Akashic Records? Why me? Why me? Why can't I live a normal life? It came down to the future, which was just potential to me. 20 years later, that I would be doing something that impacts people like you, people that are listening. And at first I thought I was going to be a news reporter, just reporting what was going on. That's my only perception at that young age. And then it evolved as I began reading people and realizing that what the term galactic historian was a person that would challenge people to think on a new scale and a new size of harmony and ways of consciousness. And as I began to read thousands and thousands and thousands of different people and decided that, at some point I have to take this talent public, there was this pushover point where Spirit said to me, here is your personal bifurcation point. The skill will never leave you. It's time. And you have to make the conscious, entangled choice to be a part of this world, speaking in the greater scales and size, and also be willing to be the unentangled observer. So when individuated beings of great charge and great polarity come to you, you simply don't take on their charge or polarity. And each time you do that, you will rocket into the infinite layers and come back with a synopsis that helps that being in charge and polarity to reduce their charge and polarity, so some form of clarity comes over them. And that's where learning to speak into layers comes, because I know no one can encode the infinite amount instantly. That includes me. Right now I'm processing the Akashic record of this world on 4 different scales, and the Akashic record of 20,000 other worlds at 4 different scales. Why? I made that conscious choice to build that muscle of understanding, so my knowingness can expand and contract based off of the signature frequency of being that is asking a question that is in their potential of 1 degree of separation. By beginning to understand the mechanics of the shared reality, that it functions on the seen and the unseen, at the solar system, galactic, and universal level, individuated questions can have a direct impact on the whole universe. Therefore, I made it a process to have all 20,000 plus Akashic record worlds a simultaneous expression of the galactic historian. So when I went on to radio and I had people asking me questions, who was I before birth? Who was I before I came here to Earth? What does this species mean? I have dreams of being an insectoid. There was instantaneous collectives of informations of thousands of different beings with millions of different Akashic records that had already experienced those beings, and there was an English manifest knowingness now.
Wow. So one thing that I want to point out that I heard you say is...
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, Alex is back from the black hole time warp.
Ben, I haven't spoken because you're so into it. I don't want to disturb your flow. It's like you're having a private session.
Okay, well, I've got more. So whenever you're done, go ahead.
I'm not. So you said that there were 57 billion beings. Is that in addition to the 7.5 billion human beings, or is that
total?
Like, are there 50?
There are 7,300,000,000 human beings and 50 billion others. So it adds up to 57,300,000,000.
So my understanding, and please correct me, is that humans have been engaged in shamanism for 100,000 years or so, and that there are 3 things that shamans do. They take spiritual journeys, they can communicate with spirits, and they have miracles around. So is shamanism the way that people have sensed and interacted with these other entities in the millions and billions across the last 100,000 years? And do we all have that capability?
Absolutely, 100%. Our oral teachers and historians have been gone through the bifurcation, reduction, and chaos process for many thousands of years. And it is those reductions that have limited the Akashic record readers of the past. So yes, shamanism has gone on for more than 100,000 years. I would say for 54 million years ago, when the first advanced civilizations in what we can simply call a golden age of consciousness, there were two forms. One that used science to understand the way spiritual processes worked, and another that used shamanism, or grounding to the celestial body and the celestial form of communication. And those two had great agreements to each other. So science and spirituality created a crossover. So you had two kinds of class: those that lived with the high technology, and those that realized they didn't need the high technology, that everything was built inside their DNA technology. So those created a culture and a society where those on one side would have true love with those on another side, and they created a synthesis race. And that synthesis race passed on science, passed on history, passed on spirituality, as we began a reduction of consciousness, where I'd say 54 million years ago we were a seventh density world. And since then our world has shrunk to a third density world. We have actually shrunk in size, and to the point where individuated beings in the learning process here, each time they're born, will go through an understanding of what it truly means to use free will here, so that shamanism, science, etc., leads to the separation of bifurcation, where individuated choice has more manifest meaning beyond placebo to the individual being manifesting a miracle, manifesting a mystical, because they chose to be an equal co-creation, non-competition, non-hierarchical order, and the apex of their own I am presence.
How does one become better at communicating with spirits? And I would say better in the way of being able to do it and to ask them for assistance, and also to differentiate between benevolent spirits and malevolent spirits?
Good question.
That is one of the age-old questions, discernment. So when it comes to speaking with spirit, there comes to what I call the external dialogue and the internal dialogue. A variety of spirits will only want to use your out loud voice to begin some form of first contact. And there will others that want to use inner dialogue, meaning the most least passive, influential way to get you to be aware that something is non-physical. There is where our discernment process begins, our inner knowingness that says, this is an internal part of me, a higher self, or an external being within my internal dialogue trying to create some form of contact. There is where physical skills such as muscle testing, dowsing, etc., were evolved from different forms of shamanism or science to give a directionality in to what to do with this entity. What I say is, ask the being its place of space-time. What is its authentic place that it came into existence? It should have an answer that should translate into English. If it truly has no place of birth, it isn't real. It is a machination of our sympathetic or a parasympathetic that is trying to keep staticness here. So the first part of discernment is separating what is our own body, creating limitations through the ego, through the sympathetic, parasympathetic, or the central nervous system that has experienced traumas that create a deception filter, that this might be this might be that background paranoia that skews discernment. True beings that are of help will show that right away. Those beings that are being deceptive, we must have those test processes that say, you are a being of the light, share a prayer with me. I am the being of now, a manifest being of light. I bring the fullness of source light here. If that being cannot reciprocate that, it is more than likely unable to transform light. If something is unable to transform light, it is a creation of chaos that may take you down a different evolutionary path that may or may not be related to your spiritual contracts. That's where the next form of discernment comes, where the shaman who has learned from the animal medicine around them how the dogs and the cats, the birds and the bees interact, how the trees always have a sacred space that does not infringe upon the other sacred space of a tree, and they all come a collective to share that of the sunlight. We have a variety of teachings that give us directions in how to deal with non-physical or manifest entities. The next layer of discernment, meaning you have ritualized or ceremonialized your spiritual hygiene. Spiritual hygiene is just as important as brushing your teeth, which is just basic intent and then adult intent to clear your environment with the fullness and knowingness of the teachings that you have. That is making a moment sacred, saying that this isn't a recreational moment. I engage my heart space and all the protective processes I've learned so that I can have a higher form of communication.
Can I ask a different set of questions?
Sure, anything you want.
How do we maximize our lifespan, from the time that we're born to the time that we die in this incarnation, and our health span, the time that we are free of injury and illness and even degradation, and our fit span, our ability to go and do anything athletically that we want to or that anyone invites us to do?
I think that first process is reintroduction to the infinite being that you were in the fetus in mother's womb, and then a reintroduction to the baby that took the first breath, and then learning your story, which I call telling your story to the fire, which is on the bigger scale, know thyself. And when knows thyself, we have the greater ability to make choices in the now. So there are many, many people out there that don't remember their 8th grade birthday or what they did when they're 13. What I tell people to do is to try to remember as much as possible, to use your natural genius ability to predict what you would be doing when you're 13, 15, 19, 24, 36, and to recall as much of that as possible. So that is in our fullness of knowingness. So the next layer of expansion has the fullness of our potential in it, which is all of the goals we've created since we were the fetus in the mother's womb. Reintroduction to that infinite process within us allows us to have a greater scale of understanding of how the reality is trying to share synchronicities with us. Does that answer your question?
Okay, we may have dropped him again. I don't know
Sorry,
what's going on.
I hit the wrong button on my phone. Sort of. I want to run the fastest that I've ever run in my life. I ran a 420 mile in high school, and recently I'm able to run a 5-minute mile. I'd like to run faster. Is there a way to tune in to good wishes of people and to spirit guides, and in addition to exercise? Of course, I have books by coaches and things, but I need an extra edge because I want to run faster than anyone my age, I'm 54, has ever run a mile before. The oldest person ever to run a 4-minute mile that we know of is Eamon Coughlin, did it at 42. Is there a way to tap into extra energy, to use telekinesis, to use good energy, to be, electrokinesis, somehow to have an advantage and advance my speed?
So to gain that advantage, you have to have the thought construct and transit from the lucid dreaming state to the manifest now.
Okay.
Dreamers and shamans have been doing that since the dawn of dreaming and shaman. You might have heard of the Kenya runners in the 1700s that could run 300 miles in a day off of a specific concoction that had like 20,000 calories in it. Things like that have existed in the past. The Inca runners who could go, 700 miles in a day, running at 20 kilometers an hour, 28 kilometers an hour. All that stuff has existed in the past. So to do that, it is entering the lucid state and training the spiritual body to have a much higher flow, and then to awaken from that lucid state and begin the movement process and return to that lucid state. Just as if you had 20 hours of work to complete and you complete it in 2, or get to work on time and you're going to be 10 minutes late and you still make it on time. Engaging that mind space to have the lucidity of the infinite dream world will make those feet move faster, and we have seen this done thousands and thousands and thousands of times through our history. How one chooses to enter and exit the lucidity will be the process of what dogmas or perception deception filters are in place that keep the staticness that says telekinesis and hydrokinesis and all that stuff, other stuff doesn't exist in our world.
That's so fun.
It's within the lucidity of dreaming.
I used to practice lucid dreaming when I was in high school. For whatever reason, I was like 16 years old, and all I wanted to do was figure out lucid dreaming. And so every night I would practice, and I would fly around and have sex with whoever I wanted, and it was so fun. And so I feel like I was just training myself for reality creation now. And I mean, Jen lucid dreams so much and does so many dream visits that she has to actually go to sleep and say, okay, I'm not leaving my body tonight. I'm not doing any dream work. I'm not doing any lucid dreaming. And I feel like lucid dreaming is one of the most important practices that somebody who wants to evolve their life could possibly do. So
Absolutely.
Now might be a good time to get to the 3 things that you want people to know that they can take away with them right now and get more tapped in and have a better life.
So I want to add a little something to lucid dreaming. It is the nature of shamanism to be the lucid dreaming. It's the same thing for wizardry, sorcery, any of those other mystical terminologies. And the same thing goes to science. It is in those lucid moments that intense clarity comes, that new theories and new concepts are brought forward that are accepted by the masses of millions. Lucidity represents, do you have the fullness of your choice points in dream world? Many people try to reach lucidity in dream space or engage it to a point where they have full control over it. In reality, we must understand that our sleep paralysis will also be a limiting factor. When we go into our natural chemical sleep paralysis to enter delta state and have that fullness of dream, we're engaging what I call the dreaming vehicle, where the I am presence removes itself from its seat of the power in the brain, returns to the heart, connects to the fullness of a DNA, and then moves from the heart to the intestinal tract and engages the dreaming vehicle, and then can perceive the dreaming world and interact with it.
Yeah.
The physical body is still very much a part of that. Lucidity is about engaging the physical body in sleep paralysis, so the sleep paralysis chemical process is undone and the mystical energy is flowing through the blood. That is how we are able to do those masterful things that we all want to learn or have seen done in the past. And understanding that lucidity process will be seeing the blood in the body flowing through its process and empowering it with the thought construct of running faster, beating the certain miles per minute, doing some form of something that was thought to be undoable in this reality. We dream it first,
levitation,
and then we.
What's the difference between shamanism, wizardry, and sorcery that you said all have lucid dreaming at their base?
Majority of the shamanism side does not step on the journey of others. That doesn't mean that they do. Wizardry, sorcery has a different set of belief system that allows them to step on the journeys of others because of the state of awareness.
What does that mean?
Making choices for people in their unawareness or their blissful ignorance that guides them into a section that isn't part of their natural radiant blueprint of health, or down information that leads them away from their natural spiritual contracts. Awareness means responsibility.
Shamans do that? I've definitely known some shamans that were on the darker spectrum that haven't.
Or the ones on the light spectrum that are dictators and don't even realize it.
Right. Okay.
You can dictate that it's the only way.
Yep.
Okay. They're still beings of light.
Is it possible to be in radiant health and to accelerate one's own healing and to de-age, to age in reverse physically?
Yes, I absolutely believe that, and I think there are thousands of examples throughout our history of people doing that.
I think you've seen two examples in the last week, Alex.
So how do you reverse the aging process? That again is about returning to the fetus in the mother's womb and having a companionship, because there's the infinite knowingness that actually created the potential of reverse aging. The infinite is there. It's a matter of how do we translate into English to create a construct that we can work with in the now that has manifest changes that not only can this individual see, but everyone else see. And it would be pointless if you're going to reverse your aging and only you could see it. Or would that be acceptable to you? Everyone has a different layer of when it comes to acceptance. Does it have to be in front of you, manifest in front of everyone to be real?
I see. And how does one lose weight best? How does one lose the unhealthy weight? How do you lose fat?
In a spiritual perspective, are you asking that from what
I'm
side?
asking in a physical sense. So 98% of diets fail, at least in the United States, and we consume with 4.5% of the world's population something like 80% of the painkillers. So clearly, we're doing something very weird with our bodies.
Okay, well, our bodies aren't in a natural digestion process. That's the first thing. The amount of preservatives in food, GMOs, and the variety of other things that affect our intestinal tract. Our intestinal tract is where we hold a tremendous amount of positive and negative psychic data. It is also where our dreaming body or our dreaming vehicle is housed. So when people gain weight and are trying to lose weight, they are, in a sense, trying to shed the negative things that are keeping them on the static and not moving forward. And the reason 98% of diets fail is motivation and belief within themselves. So what I would say, if somebody truly wants to lose weight, it's about returning the intestinal tract to its radiant blueprint of health, knowing that in the intestinal tract is 80% of our immune system, our dreaming body, and that beginning to cleanse that process and return to some form of natural food eating, limiting the amount of meat. And so there are some people that need to eat meat. And an understanding that you must make your food sacred, put your intention within it, and having that part of your daily manifest process will lower that 98% to 50% success instead of 98% failure. And then the individuated process of each diet will determine if it's right for some people. There are those that the Atkins diet, they lose weight super fast, but the minute they go off, all the weight comes right back on with each piece of sugar or carbs that they eat. Knowing thy body, planning an agenda, and having the ability to say, I can lose weight, and use the power of intention to influence the future you who may choose to eat that donut versus a salad. We as conscious beings must see our what I call residual image, that which has grown through us. I mean, you could look at pictures when you were 19 and still see the adult you looking through the face. We must see that radiant blueprint of health. We must instill it into every atom and every cell and use our belief and placebo to engage that sacred process of what? Bettering the self, bettering the environment that's around us, changing the way people interact with us based off their perception. Is he fat and lazy because he doesn't know how to eat? And all of these other projections that everyone has. Reducing the projections of others. So many people that are currently overweight now, it is literally the projections of others that have manifested that weight, and they have no coping skill to let go of that process. Thus why an entire industry of diet control and motivation has come forth.
Wow.
And
That's great.
Another question, how do you get smarter? A friend of mine who once made and then lost $800 million told me.
Each different bubble of reality is true.
A galactic historian is a person that looks at all the lines of dramatic karma.
Nudge, nudge. It's the Holy Grail.
Improvise. Mysterious.
It's counter psychic intelligence.
Why is DNA farming of this star cluster so important?
Because we do manifest our reality. We do create our reality.